what Patrick Peterson means for the Steelers draft strategy. Or no, this is it. I'm sorry. My bad. Jerry Dulac. Steelers were uncharacteristically reactive to early free agency moves. And his point is that first, he says they weren't close, nowhere near, he's told by sources, the 3-year, $33 million contract with $21 million guaranteed. Let's just start with that. What do we make of that? That they expressed great interest in Sutton. Omar did. This seems like the contract that any amateur could have guessed was going to be it. So certainly the Steelers could have guessed.
Yeah.
And they were nowhere near. So they obviously lowballed or would have Sutton, right?
Clearly they didn't think as highly of him as maybe we thought they did. I mean, I don't think $11 million a year is outrageous for a starting cornerback in the NFL. It's not $20 million or $22 million. It's half of that. You know? He is in a second to third tier of player, and that's what those guys get paid.
I'll just go with what you said there, every single syllable of it. The second point that, and that's good reporting right there, that his sources tell him they were nowhere near that modest deal. And
now, is that true? Or do you think they're saying, well, we lost this guy, let's make ourselves look good here by saying we don't think he's that good, basically?
Maybe.
Right?
Maybe. But clearly it would appear they weren't willing to do that with Cam Sutton, whether they were near or not. He says, secondly, the situation with Sutton, 28, is mindful of what happened 2 years ago with Nickelback Mike Hilton, who left in free agency. The Steelers liked him, wanted to retain his services, but they were only going to go so high. I would beg to differ on that. In fact, the choice at the time was Hilton or Sutton. That was their choice, Ron. Hilton or Sutton. And the difference for me here is Hilton was a very unusual player in the NFL. Sutton is not. Hilton was a splash guy, the number I always use. From 17 to the time he left the Steelers, the only defensive back in all of football with as many combined sacks and tackles for loss was Jamal Adams, a perennial All-Pro. Mike Hilton.
Just a dynamic blitzer. Right?
Yeah, and I thought, at least according to some places, his coverage was better than you'd think. Next Gen Stats, he's excelled in coverage over the course of his career. He's one of 5 defensive backs to allow fewer passes to be completed than expected in coverage each of his last 4 seasons. That's when he left Pittsburgh. Plus, it was only $6 million, not 11. To me, 2 very different situations, but similar in that the Steelers had a value on a guy, and
they didn't decide not to bid for him.
Yeah, I think they made a huge mistake with Hilton. I wrote it the next day.
You don't feel that way about Sutton?
No, because I think you can find Cam Suttons in a lot of places, not Mike Hilton's, not what he does. You?
Yeah, I like Cam Sutton. I thought he was a pretty good player.
So do I.
Again, $11 million a year does not strike me for being outrageous for him.
But on the comparisons to Hilton?
Yeah. I mean, that happened, 3 years ago? Hilton could do stuff that Sutton can't do. No doubt.
And then here's what else he says, is that they already have the highest paid defense in the league. They were only going to do so much to keep him. And then he talks about the Peterson deal. And he says, typically, aging players such as Peterson have to wait until after the initial flurry of signings to get a deal. And then here's the part that I don't agree with. Historically, Dulac writes, the Steelers have always tried to sign unrestricted free agents coming off their first contract who hopefully had their best years ahead of them, not behind them. The move to sign Peterson was not proactive. It was not part of the plan. It was reactive after the loss to Sutton. So he's painting a picture of a team maybe not panicking, but saying we got to get our guy.
Panicking. I was going to use that word.
I'm not so sure they wouldn't have known that this was going to happen. Listen, like I said, any one of us knew what Cam Sutton's value was. If the Steelers didn't put that value on him, they had to know they were going to had a real good chance to lose him.
Absolutely.
So I don't know about the picture of, oh my God, wait, someone signed him for $11 million? Yes, that's what everybody projected was going to happen. So you had to know. Right. And then the other part of that is the Steelers, like this is way different from what they normally do. They want to sign guys who have their best years ahead of them. I don't know about that. Let's go to Mark Barron, 2 years, $12 million. Miles Jack, 2 at 16. Melvin Ingram, 1 at 5. Larry Ogunjobi, 1 at 8. Joe Hayden, 3 years, $27 million. Alo at 30 years old. Bostic as an unrestricted free agent. Every single one of those guys clearly had their best football behind them. So I don't agree with that.
Hey, yeah, and this is not a big splash. It's a big name, but it's not a big splash, right? One year. They gave more money, out a ton more last year.
They gave more to Miles Jack. They gave almost as much to Mark Barron, for God's sake.
How about like us, the linemen last year, what they gave out on the first day?
Oh, the offensive linemen,
like
yeah.
Daniel,
now, those were examples of guys who could still – those were guys that on the way up.
We're still going to be on the way up.
Yeah. But they paid more for Ogunjobi. So I don't know, Folsey, that I don't think I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't agree with that either. And
this is actually a move that's typical of moves they've made in recent years.
Now, I will say that listening to Patrick Peterson on his podcast with Bryant McFadden, he did say that it came out of left field, that the Steelers, contacted him kind of out of left field. All of a sudden, he didn't think that he was going to go to Pittsburgh, or they didn't have any contact with him, and then it came together really quickly. So that might tell me that, they were at least kind of surprised by Cam Sutton going somewhere else. But again, like you mentioned, the dollar figure should not have surprised them, of him signing somewhere at $11 million.
And that was what was projected by amateurs.
That's why
he's going to sign for. So if the Steelers are saying, we're not going above 9, then they had to have an alternate
plan. That's
plan.
why I don't look at this as a reactive move.
Yeah.
Do you?
Me neither. No.